Your breath will be on your mind with every page. Welcome back, Mere Mortalites. So another edition of the Mere Mortals book reviews. Today it is Juan, and he is back with another book review. I've got Breath for you by James Nestor, The New Science of a Lost Art. A recent book. Now, this came out a couple of years ago. It got quite popular. There was a lot of conversations with James Nestor went on with a lot of podcasts out there, some of the larger players, Joe Rogan and the like. A lot of people reviewed the book and gave it quite big sort of call outs and props. And I actually read this a few months ago. Hadn't gone around to actually doing the book review, but here we are, book reviewing The Breath by James Nestor. Now, James himself, he is primarily a writer, I believe here within the actual pages of Breath, the book as well. It sort of goes on to talk about the various places he's actually written for, Scientific American, magazine, New York Times, etc. So very much a writer, but there was particular personal reasons why he had also gone through and written the book, and actually why he wanted to discover more around the breath. And quite quickly, he himself had issues with breathing, especially through his nostrils, and he discusses as well throughout this particular book, but we'll get into that. So, Breath in a bit of a shorthand. It isn't a giant book, 200 odd pages in length, and there's quite a few pages at the very back, but I'll leave that as a little tantalizing note for my little points about this book and why I liked it so much. So it's a relatively short to read, and it reads in probably not the way that you would imagine of what is, in essence, a sciencey sort of in the deep weeds of breathing and the best thing to come around for breathing, or at least that's what you might imagine of breath or what it actually is. So what the summary of it, realistically though, is that the central theme is about breathing, and in fact, nasal breathing, or the benefits of nasal breathing. But James manages to do this in a really different, fun way, and that is through storytelling. Most times when you're reading a book, at least for me personally, the things that I've really enjoyed is fiction books, right? Any of the really tantalizing things with a strong story that really keep me going with it. And it's not what I expected to find in this book, but it is what I encountered. And as you go through this particular book, again, split into its many chapters, into the many ways it goes and looks through it. It kind of fleshes out the story around James himself discovering the issue with his nasal breathing, going through an experiment around taping up his nose, taping up his mouth, and understanding what the differences were around his stats, basically, around his figures for bodily figures. There was, discoveries that he went down for, inclusive of going down to the catacombs and seeing how the shape of faces of old skulls was like. But throughout all that, and as I say all this, and you think about it from a nasal breathing breath book, it might be a bit boring, it might be quite technical, how much can you really talk about it? But it is just a very fleshed out story that is very smartly, very succinctly interjected with the reality, with details, and it pulls back a lot of information, of olden days. And, it's the subtitle, The New Science of a Lost Art, is very much so the case of the rediscovery. It's, hey, this is an art or a science, if you will, from back in the day, which people were either knew or were trying to do. Now, one of the big call-outs, I guess, that I saw in this book come up time and time again was the breathing pattern or the breathing timing. I think it was around, the breathing every 5.5 seconds. It's kind of like the optimal, the more effective way that you should be breathing through the nose. And now, from a scientific perspective, it's things that are being discovered as we go on day-to-day life. But way back in the day, as you go through from the story, it's talking about, that was a lost art. That's what, from the old ancient Chinese text would actually be sharing with you around, hey, if you can do this particular breathing, which, roughly kind of equates out to 5.5 seconds, then that's what you're sort of aiming for. And so it wasn't presented as, hey, facts, details, which I can sometimes get amongst it, although for something like nasal breathing, I probably wouldn't have. I wouldn't even picked it up. But the fact that it was, well, one, it was a highly recommended book already coming in before I read it. But two, it was, wow, no, this was a really joyful read. I kept on reading it for the story and finding out what happened to James and how he went discovering his nasal breathing. But it was interspersed with wonderful information, wonderful facts, and it kept out the really, I'd say, gory, hard details, references to later. And that's kind of like a made reference. So the other part of the book that I really found joyful from a structure of the book is that it leaves the story and the information presented to the user as a readable book really well presented. You can go through that, whether it be a longish sort of flight or a couple of weekends that you're going to read it through. You can do that, and you can semi-verify the information. However, if you really wanted to, you can actually go to the back of the book, and there is a whole host of notes that James actually leaves in here. Because one of the big call-outs people might have around this book and around topics like this is, well, he's a writer. What does he know? He is analyzing and displaying things that were previously found and talking to experts and trying to present information. However, what does he really know? Look, James, I'm trying to put forward that he's the person out there, the optimal person to be telling you exactly what the detail is for whatever reason. But hell, he's got a freaking hell lot of notes. So the notes right at the back, which is a full bibliography with the updated expanded notes. You can actually go to the website as well, which has all that. But for all of the pages, there is just a truckload of where you can actually find this. I'll hold it up to the camera for those who can actually see it. But yeah, there's just hundreds, like literal hundreds of notations around where the information came from, how it was sourced, why it was sort of derived. And that to me goes, wow, this is a really cleverly written book. Because obviously with a lot of those, you have to have the information present to be able to put it together. But not only was it there to be able to put together and construct a book that's so easily readable, but it was championed, like the story was championed, the joy of a reader reading it. And then if you really want to go and back it up, find out hey, is it proof in the pudding? Can I actually see if this is correct? Yes, you can. You can go through all the notes as well. Finally, the book as well at the tail end, a bit of an appendix. Breathing, I guess maybe a lot of people came into this book also wanting to know how to breathe. And it's, again, as I explained, the story talks about it and it tells about the patterns, the breathing that was done, and the names are thrown about. But for those aficionados who want to go trial out some things like Brock's breathing or breathing coordination, etc., at the back as well in the appendix, James also puts together the examples for all the different chapters, whether it be the chewing conversations of the boxers, the Buteyko breathing, resonant cohering breathing, and just gives a bit of an explanation of how do you go about do that? What would you do? Not in gigantic detail, but in enough an example. So I'll just quickly read out here the resonant cohering breathing. So just right at the back it says, a calming practice that places the heart, lungs, and circulation into a state of coherence where the systems of the body are working at peak efficiency. There is no more essential technique and none more basic. Sit up straight and relax the shoulders and belly and exhale. Inhale softly for 5.5 seconds. That's 5.5 seconds. Expanding the belly as air fills the bottom of the lungs. Without pausing, exhale softly for 5.5 seconds, bringing the belly in as the lungs empty. Each breath should feel like a circle. Repeat at least 10 times, more if possible. And then talks about several apps you can go and actually get guided by. So, that structure of the book, it really just hits on a lot of notes of what probably people would enjoy in its various ways. Great story, got the information to prove it. You can go and follow up with the various sort of breathing if you actually came specifically for that. So it just does that in a really great manner, right? Technical content as well, because he doesn't put himself forward, James, in writing this book as, hey, I'm the one who's right. He's basically presenting facts, and really got to call it that. He's presenting the facts from the past, from the present, what people are seeing from jaw construction. And honestly, the big call out for me was the way I was reading through this particular book. And, it's obviously the key focus on nasal breathing. And look, I'm not getting into the weed of the details of, what he sort of came about. But look, long story short, nasal breathing's good. Mouth breathing's kind of bad. Gives you, when you really get called a mouth breather, you should be sad about that. So, nasal breathing is a good thing. You should be aiming for that. Does a whole lot of things that are good for the body. I'd recommend you go read the book to find out all those details. But I found myself, as I read it, maybe it was just the way that it was constructed, I was very conscious about my breath and being, getting to that 5.5 second sort of pattern and nasal breathing and going slow and sipping on the air as I was going through and reading this particular book. And part of that formed a lot of joy. I think it was I was consciously doing that because you get reminded quite a lot throughout the book. There's a big piece right at the beginning around how many breaths you might have throughout your lifetime, how many breaths it'll take for you to go through and read the book. And so a lot of that made me cognizant of the breath. But then when I was reading the book, I was very focused on it as well. So I can't quite explain it as much as it was really like a double up on the concentration of what I was reading. And for that, I went, wow, this is a fantastic book. So for me, I ended up giving Breath by James Nestor an 8 out of 10. Super awesome. Will I be reading this book again at any time soon? Not particularly. So it isn't I'm going to reread it, but holy hell, would I be giving it away. This is the sort of stuff that I'd gone, please, go read this book. If it's your son or daughter, it's a friend, it's someone random, this is sort of the book that you're just kind of going to give away and say, hey, go and read this, or gift, whatever it may be. Who's it for? Honestly, anybody. If you enjoy health, you'll enjoy it. If you like stories, you'll enjoy it. If you're interested in facts, but you don't want to go and read encyclopedias and go and search it out, good book. So I honestly couldn't pick who wouldn't like it. And it is surprising, I guess, because it is Breath. You might go, it's probably not for me. I gifted this to my dad. He loved it. In fact, he read it first and he went, hey, damn, how'd you know about this book? Because this was a really good book to read. Now, I've heard it from other places, as I called out at the beginning, that it was going to be a good book, but I was pleasantly surprised about how much better it was in so many different ways. And for that, James Nestor, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now, I'm Immortal Lights. Thank you very much for tuning in to the book review here today. Yes, you haven't seen me for a while. Yes, I'm in a new location. If you're looking at a video, it's going to get a lot better. It's going to have better backgrounds. It's going to have all some good stuff, light and whatever else, but we're building. We're rebuilding in a new location. At least I am. I know Karen's got his own setups. If you want to support the Mere Mortal Lights here, you know what you can do? You can send through a boostergram. You can send through a comment with some Satoshis attached. You can say, hey, have you read James Nestor's book? Do you want to just support because we're in a new place? Do you want to let us know anything in particular? Send that through a comment with some Satoshis attached. That's called a boostergram. You can go to our support page on our website if you want to see a little bit more detail on how to go about do that. You can leave comments. You can try and reach out. You can send emails. There's a lot of ways you can reach out to the Mere Mortals here. We're always welcome any and whichever way. Reach out. It's fun. But for now, we're going to leave it there. Thank you, Mere Mortal Lights. One out.